Any of you that know me, you can see my hair is absolutely out of control, probably like most of you out there. I wish I could turn on everybody else's webcam to see what y'all look like. Anyways, welcome. Really, the intention of our presentation today is basically we've all kind of reflected on this is a strange time and people are doing strange things. And one of the things that we've noticed is it's become a really opportune time for people to analyze their business, analyze their marketing efforts, and maybe start to look at some of the things that they've wanted to do in the past, but those two big blockers have always come in and deterred them from doing that, and that's time and resources. So we really look at this as an opportunity to sharpen the saw and to take a look at some of the things that you've maybe wanted to do in the past but haven't had those time or resources to do it. And that's really what our goal is today. And we also have some neat things that we want to show you that other people are doing to stay connected to their prospects and clients during this time. It's me with a normal haircut. My name is Chris Wells. I'm Executive Vice President of Marketing and Optimization at DS Graphics and Universal Wild. So one of the things that we talk about in this presentation and really in our lives as marketers is a concept called response optimization. We all know what it is. We've tried to categorize it, so make it a little bit easier to understand. One of the biggest issues that we have as marketers is balancing efficiency, meaning how do I lower the cost per unit of whether I'm doing print or email or social media communications or whatever. How do I make it as efficient as possible? But I also, that's the cost per unit. I also want to make it effective, and that's the response per unit. So how do I make it the most relevant, the most targeted? And in most cases, those work against each other. It's this dichotomy that we have to solve. If you think of print, print is our world. So this whole thing isn't about print, but I'll use the print as an example here. And I imagine most of you do some print because you wouldn't be on the call. The best way to make print as efficient as possible to lower that cost per unit is to print more, right? There's this whole fixed cost that you have to deal with. And the more you produce, the lower that cost per unit gets because you just amortize that cost over a long quantity. The problem is to print more of something, you need to make it more generic and less targeted. You need to have, it has to have a longer shelf life. It can't be obsoleted. So you have to put things in there that you don't think are going to change. It has to apply to more and more people. So it has to be more general. It can't be as specific to a market or an industry or an individual. So the more you do that, the less effective that piece becomes. So you've accomplished your efficiency goal because you've got millions of these pieces, so you bought them at a really good cost per unit, but the effectiveness is not there because it's not speaking to the individual needs of your constituency. Take the flip side of that, effectiveness. So if you want to be extremely effective, write a handwritten note. Try doing that for your whole database of prospects and customers, and you can see that the cost is astronomical. So the more effective we make things, typically that cost per unit is very high because we have to recreate that fixed cost with every iteration of what we're trying to do, whether it's one-to-one or whether it's one-to-many, but still versioned. So what response optimization is looking at technology and systems and processes to try to eliminate the overhead associated with any of these types of communication. And by doing that, you take out some of that fixed cost, so you're able to not only lower that cost per unit curve, but make it flatter, such that in an ideal world, we don't have this, but it would be great, if you did 1 million pieces or one piece, the cost per unit would be the same. But that's what response optimization is. It's an optimal zone that we're looking to get into. We're never quite there. We always have opportunities for improvement, but we're really trying to use technology to bring those two things into balance and make them play nicer. The top challenges that we found, and we tell this story to a lot of customers and prospects, is that time, resources, and resistance. I'm not talking about your organization is resistance to change. That's just cliche. Resistance is just, we've been doing this and it's working, so we don't really want to take the risk of changing, or we don't have the time or the resources to put something like this together to get it launched in time. We started too late. That's what today is about. I'm going to give you a lot of different ideas. Some I'm going to not go into much detail about, but we have the opportunity to go into much more detail at a later time, just to get you thinking about different ways you can approach your marketplace. So some of the things that we constantly run into are, what are the mistakes people make when they're looking to build out new campaigns, change campaigns, look at new technologies and things like that. The number one thing we see is a concept that we call campaign fatigue. This is an internal concept to your company. Your customers and prospects are not sick of your creative. They are not sick of the pieces that you've sent them. You see them every day, you get sick of them. So a big mistake we see people make is they change campaigns because they're sick of seeing them internally, even if they're working. Your company has probably done this. Your business has probably done this. There are certain things, we work a lot of colleges and universities. I know you have kind of, we call it the three in the tree, right? There's three kids in front of a tree. That's the picture everybody uses. If they're holding a BlackBerry or a Razor, I guess the Razor's coming back, but maybe there's some imagery that needs to be updated. But be careful about campaign fatigue, because as much as we'd like to think, even if we do the same thing every year and the customers get the same thing every year, as much as we'd love to think that they remember our pieces, they probably don't. So don't change it just for the sake of changing it. Internally, you're sick of it. That's not a good reason. Second is the response is too low, response is too slow. You always have to ask compared to what. And we're going to talk about testing and the right way to test, but you can't say that response is too low or too slow, even if you're comparing against other pieces. So there's certain ways to do testing where you can really see if something is having an impact on either your quickness or quality or number of responses. Second thing, just talked about it, right? It's testing without a control group. You have to isolate what's causing changes. If you decide, based on this presentation, that you are going to do a direct mail piece that uses near field communication, mixed mode augmented reality, and a interactive response, and then a follow-up with a promotional product, and you get a great response on that, we have no idea why, right? That's not the way you test something new. The way you do that is you take those components and you take your whole list and you give half of them that and half of them what you always did at the same time. Because as we know, there are so many factors related to the success of marketing. Third is building campaigns or systems that are difficult to quickly modify up or down. So we've spent a lot of time, most of us, building systems that are scalable so that when we get busy, we can handle that without hiring 1,000 more people. One of the most important things is also to make sure that whatever marketing system we're using, we can also ramp it down so that we can go to the single or 2 or 3 or 100 people and not have this whole new setup thing. So really looking at your systems and saying, can they scale up? And as importantly, can they scale down? The other big problem we see is that we believe that our target audience will behave differently than we do. And a perfect example of this is contact forms on our website. We ask people to fill them out to get things. I always ask people when I'm live, how many of you have searched for or researched buying a car online? Just about everybody has. And how many times, if you see a car online and you click on that car and you'd like to see the price, it asks you to fill out your name and your phone number and your email. Do you do that, or do you just ditch out and try to find that same car where somebody's actually willing to show you the price? Almost all of us ditch out. Over 85% actually, studies, the DMA says. So why do we expect that our customers will behave any differently if we ask them to fill out contact forms for information that's really not unique or has an intrinsic value outside of the price of the car or our webinar schedule or whatever? So be very careful with contact forms. Also emails. We spend a lot of time and money building these image-heavy emails, yet if you're going after particularly somebody that doesn't know your business, think of how many emails you get from somebody you don't know, and do you ever even see those images? You don't. In your preview window on your phone, it says, do you want to download the images? If you don't know who that came from, you don't do it. So why do we think our people that we're marketing to are going to do that? They won't. So if you're going after a brand new audience that doesn't know your brand, doesn't know who you are, make it a colloquial email as if you're just sending them a text email. They're not going to do anything differently than you do. If you're one of those people that downloads images for every email you get, please message me so I can talk to you, because I'd really like to. You're probably a circle, let's put it that way. And then third, designs versus results. This is also related to that same concept of overutilization of imagery and content. So if you receive in the mail, from a direct mail standpoint, a self-mailer or a postcard, and it's beautifully designed, that's great. However, the person receiving it doesn't have to do anything else in order to figure out what it is you're trying to promote. They don't have to interact with it at all. And studies show that if someone interacts with a piece, the likelihood of the response goes up exponentially. So a self-mailer and a postcard The kimono is off. I don't need to do anything to realize what you're trying to show me. However, if you send something in an envelope, maybe a window envelope, maybe a window envelope with a stamp on it, these are all things that can be done as cheaply and sometimes less expensively than self-mailers and postcards. Most people are going to open it because they're curious about it. They are going to find out what's inside. Once you get them interacting, now you've got an opportunity to get some results. And fifth, measurement of cost versus ROI. We all know this, but not all of us practice it. So when you're building a campaign and you want to try something new and it's more expensive, right? Cost per unit is less efficient, is going up. Make sure you're not looking at the cost per piece. You're looking at the cost per button seat, per application online, per campus visit, per whatever it is you're trying to achieve, and what's the value associated with that. So we're all using all kinds of different channels out there. And one of the things we like to look at is there's advantages and disadvantages to some of these. You probably know a lot of this, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time. I am going to point out things that I think are maybe a little bit different that you may not have thought of before. Email, we know it's inexpensive. It gets there in seconds, simple to produce. It's increasingly targetable, right? Rich media options. It's global. One of the biggest advantages of email today, it reaches remote workers. If you are in the B2B area and you do direct mail, you know that you have a big problem right now, and that problem may not go away. Most companies, and I am asking a survey of this, but most companies I've talked to right now do not have a policy for forwarding mail to their remote workers. I would be interested if your company does. This is something that companies are going to have to develop, but right now, most companies do not have an established policy to forward hard copy mail to their remote workers. So that's an advantage to email now. Disadvantages, difficult to retain updated addresses and actually get the right address, right? Most people in the United States in 2017 had 3.2 email accounts. Filtering attachments, DMA last year said the average American worker gets 80 emails in and only sends 40 out. That's an imbalance. That's why we don't download the pictures. Certainly, about the opt-out requirement, and there's a generation loss, right? I have a 24-year-old, I have a 21-year-old who's a junior in college, and I have a senior in high school, boo, 18. I can tell you that none of them learned how to really email until they started having to interact with us in colleges, right? Even their teachers in high school don't really use it that much. So this is a generation that these generations are going to take it over. Email is going to become less and less the desired method of communication. All of you with Gen Z and Millennials know exactly what I'm talking about. Phone is the fastest response time. It's also got the highest response rates. It's also extremely expensive. There are ways to bring phone telemarketing down cost-wise. IVR, this is the robocalls that we all love so much. That can be used. It can be used in a less intrusive way than I think it is being used now. We have a couple customers that use it very successfully. I'm sure their end users don't like it, but it's working for them. This is something fairly new that we just came across, which is ringless voicemail. So there's a technology now that we have where we can leave a voicemail on a cell phone number and it never rings. So again, part of our job as marketers is to create curiosity and interest. And if a voicemail shows up on our phone, we're apt to listen to it, at least start to look at the translation of it, versus a incoming call from an unknown number. We're less apt to answer it. And then if that leaves a voicemail, we're less apt to listen to it because we kind of think that it was a telemarketer to begin with. So something to look into. We know the main disadvantages of phone, and this is one of the biggest ones. I'm actually surprised that still 41.7% of people have landlines, maybe more circles, but the crossover here took place in 2015, where more households had only a cell phone versus cell phone and or landline, and now it's only 41.7%. My guess is it's going to continue to drop from there. Next one is text messaging. So text messaging has been used very successfully for appointment reminders and things of that nature. However, we're starting to see it being used more and more for direct marketing, but there are a lot of watch outs with it. First of all, incredibly fast response time. I'll show you kind of some data on that in a minute. Very high response rates. We're averaging almost 30% response rates on interactive text messaging. Super inexpensive. It takes priority over all other methods. So no matter what people are doing, and we love this, if they get a text, they're looking at their phone. It's a problem, but it's the reality. So if we want to reach people, that's how we do it. We text them. Disadvantages, certainly we know there's not a lot of creative options. It's a double opt-in with SMS text. Any of you who are doing this know this. Unlike email, which is just an opt-out, texting is a double opt-in. You have to opt in and then opt in again in order to message people. The other thing is there's super high risk associated with this. If you build trust with people to send them text messages, you cannot abuse it. If they think that you're pushing products left and right, they're just going to type stop and it's over. The other thing is there's very tight approval rules. So if anybody's done this before, you have to build out the entire campaign. If it's an interactive texting where you're going back and forth with keywords and things like that, the entire campaign has to be detailed out, and you need to send that to, there's a couple of people that do it. CellTrust is probably one of the better known ones. And what CellTrust does is they will interact and get approval from all of the major carriers, Verizon and AT&T, to make sure that your entire campaign is approved. And here's a hint, they will ask you to change something, probably to justify their jobs, but always put something in there that give them an opportunity to change it. It's like OSHA, they'll find something. But here's how great text messaging works from a response time standpoint. This is real live data from one of our customers. You can see that inside of 90 minutes from sending the message, 70% of the people have responded. That's amazing, right? To have, even with emails, I mean, you get the initial blast, but to have that many respond inside of 90 minutes, and really, by less than, right around 3 hours, 80% of the people have already responded, and then you kind of have some stragglers. So super, super fast response time with text messaging. So if you have a business where you think you can use it, it's certainly worth looking into. Social media, powerful one-on-one, fast response time, great viral opportunities, super easy to track. It is the preferred communication vehicle for upcoming generations, as we all know. Here's something interesting that we all know that Millennials and Xennials and Gen Z, we're going to talk more about them, want to interact with a brand that has a social media relationship with them. But 84% of Millennials do not trust traditional search engine optimization advertising. This is bad news for Google, but it's going to get worse once we start looking at Gen Z, because they just don't believe the ads that show up. So if you're using search engine optimization, I suggest you start looking at other ways, and social media is probably the best one. It's really difficult to attain opt-in. Again, there's a huge high risk for lack of execution. Any given day, you can see tweets and posts that people wish they never did. So you can't be one of those people. It's also you have to constantly provide content and value to keep people interested. They may not unfollow you, but they'll uninterest you. So you've got to keep the stuff fresh. And immediacy is most important. This is kind of amazing that the expectation for response on any social media platform from an organization is in minutes, and the average corporate response in 2019, according to the DMA, was 3.2 days. So if you don't have somebody looking at your social media and responding, you're missing. And certainly lack of relevancy will kill it quickly. So we're big fans of stealing stuff. I thought this was kind of neat. This was from a presentation that I saw with Scott Stratton. He's really, really interesting speaker, but he talks about sharing things. And if you want people to share your posts on social media, create something that's shareable. So this was a milk company, Chateau Milk Company. If you can see on your screen, it says, in case of accident, please have cookies ready. Lots and lots and lots of cookies. Got a lot of shares for a little milk company. So we copied it. This is our new truck. You can't really see the sign, but I'll show it to you up close. It says, caution, the marketing mojo inside this truck may bring success upon impact. So don't be afraid to copy stuff if you think it's good. We do. And finally, direct mail. So direct mail, we know that it's measurable when it's integrated with electronic methods, which we're going to show you today, some of them. It's very targetable, has the third highest response rate, by the way, behind only phone and SMS text messaging. It's also a great opt-in device. So if you're looking to get into social media, somebody's social media feed, if you're looking to get into an SMS text messaging relationship with somebody, direct mail is one of the channels you can utilize to get in, partly because it's very limited behavior change. The majority of people, I think I have it on the next slide, I think it's 77% still look at their mail daily, and 97% of the people in the United States get mail daily. I don't know who the 3% are. There's a lot of people in this presentation that I would love to meet, but there are 3% of the people that don't get their mail daily. It's also a trusted delivery method, right? It's still a federal offense to go into somebody's mailbox and steal it. Limited competition. I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. it also has a very long lifespan. The average email, marketing email or direct marketing email lasts for about 2.2 seconds versus the average direct mail piece lasts for 17 days. Part of that is we're lazy and we don't clean up the counter often enough, but the reality is it's sitting around for longer. It has a longer shelf life. Here's the other thing, competition going down. It's more captive audience. I got a slide next I'm going to show you on that. Disadvantages, you all know it's more expensive, long startup time, the junk mail image. USPS is constantly changing regulations on us. It's also not very effective for response. Most people will want to respond in some electronic format. So the days of kind of the BRE and send this back are starting to go away. They're not gone, but they're starting to go away. The other big disadvantage right now, how do you obtain home addresses for remote workers? One of our partners that we use a lot for list acquisition and data enhancements has developed a program where they're getting about a 75% accuracy hit with a name, corporation, and corporate address to reverse back to a home address. I'd be very careful about that. We have a work from home campaign. Some of you are on it. We've asked our salespeople to go out and ask if you mind receiving things from us. It is not a direct marketing campaign. It's just things that we think could be helpful for people. That's a good way to do it, but certainly tougher to reach remote workers right now through direct mail. When I talk about competition, this was from the 2019 DMA statistical fact book. The average consumer in the United States receives 728 hits per week for direct marketing email across all their email addresses. That same person gets 30 direct mail pieces. I would rather be one of 30 than one of 728. Your competition is much lower in the direct mail world. Here's the other thing, daily review, as I talked about earlier, 77% are looking at their mail daily. Only 18% are looking at their non-primary email account daily. And that's normally, unless it's a customer of ours, that's normally the one they're giving us. Because you know what? Remember from the earlier slides, that's the one we give to people, right? We don't give them our primary email when we're just kind of exploring on whether or not to do business with a company. We give them the one that maybe we check every other day or something like that. So it's probably even more unbalanced now because a lot of the direct mail has stopped. So you got a great opportunity there. In terms of best practices, we've kind of put together what we've seen as ideas from a lot of our different customers and our own experience to help you think about these campaigns and some slight edge things or best practices that you may want to make sure you don't forget about. Firstly, you all know this, but we don't see it as often as we would like to. Blend these strategies into an optimal mix for your audience and budget, right? Don't use any one of them. They all have their pluses and minuses. Put the investment areas with the largest potential return. As an example, emails, image-heavy emails with people you don't know have a fairly low response rate. Don't put the investment there. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, particularly as it relates to direct mail. Integrate technologies, efficiency, timing, scalability. Those are all things that technology can help you with. Now is the time to investigate these, maybe even put them in place so that when we get back to normal, which we will, and a lot of people that I'm talking to, we're not doing anything to flatten the business curve. I think most people I'm talking to are expecting that they're going to have to accomplish everything they were supposed to accomplish from February, March, April, and May in June to December, along with everything they were still planning on doing then. So you're probably in that boat too. Again, measure the return on investment of the campaigns, do a true randomized A/B split, and determine what success means to you. I ask this to people all the time. What is the average response rate for direct mail? People in the business usually respond 1.6%, 1.8%, somewhere under 2%, and that's actually correct. However, like all these statistics we're being exposed to every day, you have to look deeper into the numbers. This is from 2018 DMA stat book. This is what happens in response rates when you actually look a little bit deeper into it. If someone has no knowledge of your brand, it's about 0.5%. So don't spend your money direct mail on people that don't have any knowledge of your brand. Use some of those other vehicles. If they have some knowledge of your brand, and this usually means that you are an established brand, you're a household brand, it's about average, 1.8%-ish. If someone has a previous relationship with you, they're not a customer, but you've had engagements with them, it's 3%. Guess what? If they're already a customer, it's almost 8%. So if you are looking to add new offers or new services to your existing customer base, direct mail is by far the best response vehicle out there. But you have to look into it, invest your money where you're going to get the greatest return. Second part of content, the second part of best practices is content. So these are three of my favorite books. And because they're mine and it's my presentation, I'm going to talk about them. Send me your favorite books. I'm looking for stuff to read, right? Let's all share. But they go from oldest to newest, right? The first one, Discipline of Market Leaders, I think was in the 90s, and Building a Story Brand was just published, I believe, last year. But each one of these books talks about these real important concepts, I believe, to content and things that we see people making mistakes with content all the time. Discipline of Market Leaders. I'm going to give you the summary so you don't have to read these, but it's all about focus. What the authors say is that every company has to go to market in one of three very specific disciplines. Doesn't mean they don't operate in all three, but they have to go to market with one of three. One is operational excellence. Operationally excellent companies are companies like FedEx, like IKEA. Their entire business model is based on bringing things to market cheap, decent quality, fast, but you don't have a lot of flexibility, right? FedEx, if you don't follow their rules, they're not really flexible around that. Second way to go to market is technological leadership. A lot of you are in the technology business. I see it on the list of people that are in the webinar. You say, oh, we're technology leaders. That's not what I mean. It doesn't mean you're in the technology business. It means you lead the public with technology that they don't even know they need yet. Companies like Apple, companies like Sony back in the day with the Walkman, nobody knew they needed a tape player, showing my age, with headphones that they could walk around with, right? These are brand new products and services that are being brought to market that people didn't know they need. If you're in a technology business, unless you're doing that, you're not in the tech, you shouldn't go to market as a technological leader. And the third is customer intimacy. Disney's always the example, right? With their employees, they can spend up to, I think it's $500 to make any customer or any guest happy. Ritz-Carlton, if you ever stayed there, anything. They memorize your name and they send employees pictures of you so that anybody you interact with will call you by your Mr. Mrs. last name. A really amazing experience. Not the cheapest places to go, but that's customer intimacy. The problem with most companies is that their go-to-market strategy straddles the fence on all of these different disciplines, and the consumer can't sort it out. So pick one from your marketing content and go with it. Doesn't mean you're internally trying to save costs, but externally, you're a customer intimate company. Pick one and go with it. Second book, Made to Stick. This is all about simplicity. This book has a concept, the biggest concept in it is called the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is when we build things internally to send outside externally. And a real clear example is when we use industry terminology that's important to us inside, but we're so familiar with it, we don't think about the fact that people from the outside have no idea what we're talking about. I tell our salespeople all the time, they use the word stock to describe paper. Stock is a print term. You that have been in the industry a while, you know stock means paper. But if we're dealing with somebody who's brand new to marketing events planning and they need to do a direct mailer to get somebody to a trade show, and we ask them what kind of stock they want to use, they have no idea what we're talking about. It's a curse of knowledge. The way they demonstrate this in the book is really interesting. They do a study. They have two groups of people. One group of people they call the tappers. The other group is called the listeners. The tappers put on a set of headphones and 120 very common songs are played through their headphones. And what they had to do is tap out the rhythm to those songs as they were hearing them. Happy Birthday, Twinkle Twinkle, things that most people would know. Real simple. So the listeners had to sit there and guess what songs the tappers were tapping. At the end of the study, they asked the tappers, what percentage of the songs that you tapped do you think the listeners guessed? And the average was 50%. The actual amount that the listeners actually got was 2.5%. It was so frustrating for the tappers on why they couldn't figure out, why the listeners couldn't figure out what song they were tapping. It's Happy Birthday. How can you not get that? It's because they had the curse of knowledge. They knew what the song was. The listeners didn't. So simplicity, make sure that you know that your ideas and concepts are simple and can reach the audience and they can understand them. Third book, Building a Story Brand, Don Miller. Don Miller's great, does great webinars on writing workshops and things like that. But building a story brand is all about the engagement. What is your engagement like with your customer and what is your story? So one of the things that he talks about that's very interesting is we're 34 minutes and 42 seconds into this presentation and I'm doing everything I can to keep your all attention, right? Yet many of us could sit down for 9 hours and watch season 3 of Ozark or The Tiger King, and we're just completely sucked into this thing for the entire time. Why is it? It's because entertainment industry knows how to use stories to keep people interested. And we as marketers need to do the same thing. So think of a great story, all the classic stories. You have a hero. The hero has a problem. There's usually a villain that's creating the problem or preventing the hero from solving the problem. The hero meets a guide. The hero doesn't know how to solve the problem, but the hero has that intrinsic ability to solve the problem, and the guide helps the hero to solve the problem, and the hero solves the problem, and they all live happily ever after. The mistake most companies make is they position themselves as the hero. We're not the hero. We're the guide. We're Yoda to our customers, Luke Skywalker. We're the drunk Woody Harrelson character from Hunger Games to Katniss Everdeen. You have to position yourself as the guide and make your customer a hero. So that's building a story brand. Really good thing. He's got some workshops that you can use in there. And he's also got a weekly email where he kind of shares different story brands. It's really good. It will help you clarify your brand. It's great for salespeople for like the elevator speech and all that kind of stuff. So anybody we have any art history people in here? Probably not. This is Hieronymus Bosch. This is the Seven Deadly Sins. It's an old painting from the 1300s. The reason I put it up there is because did you know that there are 7 key copy elements? This has been talked about for decades, and it still is true today. Any successful copy has to contain or play on one of these emotions that people have. Once you learn these, you'll see how the best advertisers in the world utilize them. Fear, greed, guilt, anger, exclusivity, salvation, and flattery. Look at your messages and see which of these emotions are they eliciting in your desired audience. And if it's none, figure out how to do that, right? Start looking at advertisements, start looking at content, start looking at marketing campaigns, and try to figure out, are they eliciting an emotional response to me? Because emotion drives motion, right? That's what we are as marketers, is our job is just to transfer enthusiasm from what we have for our product and service to somebody who doesn't yet utilize it. And emotions is what makes that connection of that transfer of enthusiasm. So look at those, and those are in your handout too, so you don't have to write them down. Direct mail tips. Here's just some quick things little tidbits to keep in mind. 1, if you're not commingling your mail, and if you don't know what that is, reach out to somebody and find out what it is, somebody in the industry. If you're commingling mail, especially if you're doing straight first class mail because you're sending personalized stuff or whatever, it's a 10 to 50% savings on first class. Worth it. Here's another little tip. If you're doing marketing mail, which used to be called standard or bulk or nonprofit, and you're mailing from the New England area, so only works in New England. I know we have some people from outside of that. I don't have the formula for you. But if you're in New England, add 9 days to the first number of the destination zip code, and that's about how long it will take for standard mail. So if I'm mailing New England to New England, zip codes start with 0, about 9 days. If I'm mailing to Beverly Hills 90210, 18 days. There's a little trick for you. The other one, take advantage and know the USPS promotional discount program. We have a whole webinar series on this. I'm going to send you the link and understand some of these components that you're already doing during the promotional discount period. All you have to do is sign up for it and you'll save money on postage. And I've included a postal template cheat sheet that's in your handout about sizes and things like that, something helpful to look at. In terms of mailing costs, because postage in many cases, as you all who do direct mail, sometimes eclipse the cost of the print. It doesn't seem to be getting any better, but here's kind of the Michelin guide to direct mail methods and costs. From the least expensive, which is a true first class postcard. Anything bigger than 4 1/4 by 6 is actually not a postcard. 6 by 9 postcard is actually a letter, and there's no minimum. That's the cheapest thing to mail. All the way up to the most expensive, which is straight first class. And I'm giving you the delivery days, and I'm giving you if there's a minimum piece requirement. That's in your handout, but just some helpful information to know. So we're going to talk a little bit about trends. I'm going to read something to you. I'm fed up with the ceaseless carping of a handful of spoiled, self-indulgent, overgrown adolescents. This is a generation that was raised with the highest standard of living in the history of the world. We have a generation, or at least part of a generation, whose every need has been catered to since birth. Now, when they finally face adulthood, they expect the gift giving to continue. But the whiners want everything now. A generation raised on the principle of instant satisfaction simply can't understand the concepts of long-term planning and deferred gratification. What is their reaction when they don't get what they want? That's right, they throw a tantrum. Most people live ordinary lives of quiet desperation, stuck in uninteresting jobs that they're afraid to lose. If you want more than that, move out of your parents' house, start working, and for heaven's sakes, stop whining. So in a group, I always ask, who is this talking about? And usually somebody that's 29 years old raises their hand sheepishly and said, that's my generation. Actually, this was written by the Newsweek staff on October 31st, 1993 about my generation, right? These are the Gen Xers. Guess what? It's no different today. Every generation that comes up, we have the same misperceptions about. So we have to talk about what's causing the fundamental shift in how we communicate, not necessarily the generational part of it. I'm going to talk a little bit about generations, but here's the old way that we'd market our product and service. We have a product or a service, and that's the king, right? And we have all these different channels. We have direct mail, email, social media, we have trade shows, we have collateral, whatever it happens to be. And we produce information for each of these channels, and then we push that out to our customers. That's the way it was done. That's not the way it's done now, and that's not the way it'll be done in the future. Now the top of the heap is the customer, and we have to take that customer and follow them through the different life cycles that they have. And within each life cycle, we have to use a combination of all these different marketing tools to market the correct product and service to them that matches the life cycle stage that they're in. This has created a tremendous amount of difficulty in the marketer's world because we have to build systems and processes for each of these, and more importantly, we have to understand what life cycle our customer is in. So when we talk about, and this is the way the new generations are going to work. They are used to selecting how they want to be communicated with, who they want to be communicated from. They're experts at filtering out things, and they're experts at creating the information flow around them that they want to receive. So how soon do we have to worry about this? Like now, right? So 2019, 44% of the working workforce in the United States is millennials. By 2025, 75% will be millennials and Gen Z. And why do they matter? Well, this is interesting. 52% of workers said they're least likely to get along from someone from another generation. And here's the scary part. 62% of Gen Z anticipates challenges with working with boomers and Gen X. Only 5% anticipate challenges working with millennials. We've got to figure this out. And each generation has their own way of wanting to be communicated with. I have this chart in your handout, so I'm not going to go through it, but it's important to look at that. And the view in terms of social media, that stuff changes all the time. Facebook, like when my oldest, who's now 23, was first starting to get into social media, it was Facebook. He says we wrecked it for him, right? All these people putting their senior pictures, high school pictures up on Facebook for the seniors in high school to see and feel, I don't know, good about. I don't think it would, but they're not seeing them because they're not on Facebook. Here's an example of communication divide. Have you ever seen this? What's up? I just left you a voicemail. Okay, what's up? I saw his presenter talk about voicemail and how nobody uses it anymore. And he said, my mom's got a podcast. If you want to listen to it, I'll give you the password to my voicemail. Get it? So we have to know what are the key factors influencing these upcoming generations. Authenticity, accessibility, the human touch, consciousness. 84% of millennials said they would change brands because the other brand had more of a conscientious vision or mission behind them. Personalization, speed, technology integration, social media, we talked about that. Rewards, this was amazing to me. Over 50% of millennials surveyed 2 years ago said they would buy a product that they didn't even need if it meant getting them points or whatever to the next level of rewards for whatever the customer was. Really? It's true. And ease of use. So what are some slight edge things we can do to take advantage of all of these things? Well, one of the biggest things, and as it relates to direct mail, is the format. So some of you have seen like the Gartner Magic Quadrant chart. That's what this is based off of. This was a study done in 2015 by John Lininger, he's at Clemson University. He really specializes in graphic arts, does some really cool stuff. But they did a study where they sent out the same kind of message to a similar audience using all different types of outer packaging to see what the response rate would be. But he did better than that because he also tracked the cost. So as in a Gartner quadrant, we have two axes. One is the open rate or the response rate, which is a very low response rate, bad, to a very high response rate, good. And then we have the cost, a very high cost, bad, to a very low cost, good. So the magic quadrant is right up here, right? I don't know if you see my mouse. Yeah, you can. Those are things that are low cost with high response rates. And if you look at all these formats that he used, only one fell into there, and it is a 6x9 window envelope. Why is that? I'll tell you why. Because it looks important. A 6x9 window envelope looks important. People open it, and again, we know that if they interact with it, higher chance they're going to respond to it. So this is the whole chart. It's showing what the response rate was, what the total cost per piece was, and then what the cost per response was. So we went from a low of $17.78 per response to a high, which was a handwritten Monarch envelope, cost $35 each to do. Look at the response rate was phenomenal, but this is why we don't measure just response rates. We look for the total ROI. We had a 24% response, but it costs $150 each to get those responses. The goal of direct mail is for people to open it and to interact with it. So we have a customer, I think there's a couple people from this customer on the line. I always use them as a case study because we started talking about this and saying, well, one of the things that's become very popular is trans-promotional marketing. And trans-promotional marketing in its truest sense is basically taking your marketing message and integrating it into a bill, the utility bill, statement, something like that. And you see this sometimes. Vistaprint really launched this when you used to get your credit card statement, and Vistaprint would put a little flyer in there for free business cards, right? That's how they did it, because you're going to open your credit card statement. Well, they decided to say, well, why don't we make it just kind of look like a bill, right? It's a direct marketing piece. We'll say time-sensitive information enclosed. We use a window envelope. Guess what? It worked. How do we make it better? Well, let's make it that little bill size. How do we make it even better? Let's put a stamp on it, because I don't know, I'm in the business. So if I get something with an indicia, I look to see if it says standard mail, and I know it's junk. But if I put a stamp on it, that's a standard mail stamp, you don't know. What happened? 57 cents was the total cost, 6% response rate, cost of response was $9.50. Just to remind you, back on the chart, 1778 was the best before. Hey, this is how this piece performed against regular size postcards, black and white flyers. It's called the Trans Promo. It's the one in the middle. A 4-panel self-mailer, fully personalized, right? Another black and white flyer, and a final 6x9 postcard, full color, fully personalized, not crappy postcards. Huge difference. The things on the right, those are all the different cities that these things were mailed to. So this is not just a regional thing. Huge response. Also looking at the handwritten Monarch, saying, geez, a 24% response rate, that's pretty good. How can we do that cheaper than $35? Well, there's a couple of ways. One is through a device called a Max Writer, which is kind of like the old AutoSigns. It takes any piece of writing instrument that can fit in its little thing, and it will hand write. It's about 5 or 6 different fonts available. You can also do a custom font for somebody's own handwriting, and or you could just kind of digitally print, scripted fonts. So that brings the cost way down. Did that. Regular stamp cost per piece went from the $35 to $1.70. It was a 44% response rate. $3.86 per response. It's getting even better. How else? Integration, email, informed delivery. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Digital, using augmented reality, near field communication, personalized addressable television. All of these emerging and advanced technologies are covered in one of our webinars. There's a recording on it on the site. Personalized URLs, general URLs. I put QR codes question mark because QR codes were completely misused when they first came out. And here are my favorite examples. By the way, the book on the right, also worth reading. QR Codes Kill Kittens. Scott Stratton, I spoke about him earlier. Hilarious book. But here's how people started using QR codes. If the image on the top left there, that's one of those sensor doors. There's a Facebook ad with a QR code to scan. If you look closely, you'll see the sensors on the outside. And if you actually look from an engineering standpoint, those doors swing out. That's why it says keep clear. So as you approach that to scan with your phone, the door will actually swing out and hit you, or you'll be backpedaling quickly to keep your phone on it to read the QR code. Horrible use. How about the texting while driving is dangerous? Just let it ring with a QR code on it. That's smart. You ever try to scan a QR code on a ketchup bottle? That's tough. Try doing it behind an airplane. And then this is my favorite one on the bottom there. You put a QR code in an email so that you can scan the QR code from your computer screen onto your phone and get a crappier version of what you would get if you actually clicked the link that was in your email. Or if you got this on your phone, you have to borrow somebody else's phone to scan it. So just be smart about it. Now, however, QR codes are coming back because you don't need an app anymore, right? All we have to do is use our camera and bingo, the QR code launches. Huge opportunity for us. So integration technologies, again, watch our webinar on emerging advanced technologies, quick overview, informed delivery. If you sign up for it as a consumer, you get an email every day with black and white scans of everything that's going to be in your mailbox. This has a 70% open rate because it comes from the USPS. As marketers, you can take advantage of that for free and replace this image with a color image and add a interactive link to it to bring them to a website offer or something like that for free. It will guarantee that the email will get there at the same day as the direct mail campaign. You talk about spaced repetition, try to time your emails to guarantee to be there the same day as direct mail. Impossible. The other thing, that email address these people don't want to give to you, they give to the post office because they want this. The other thing is augmented reality. If you have a business where it's hard to communicate very complex information, use augmented reality. Now, this requires an app, and people don't like apps, I understand that, but you can have a video play inside of a marker. You can communicate a lot more information through augmented reality than you can on the paper. You can also use enhanced augmented reality, where things can actually become part of the three-dimensional world. This tree obviously is not part of the direct mail piece, but also the little button down below is not. That's an RSVP button where you tap to register for a webinar. The other thing you can do is mixed augmented reality. And mixed augmented reality is basically putting the augmented reality in the world around you. The cool thing with this is now there's web AR, you don't need an app. Biggest disadvantage of augmented reality is you have to download an app. Web-based, you don't need an app. You either use, in this case, we used a near field communication sticker. So that just caused the phone to launch into it, or you could also have scanned a QR code. Again, a good use of QR codes, you just take your camera and point it over there, and it brought you to a mixed mode augmented reality experience where we put these cute little animated animals and a little sign, tap here to join us for a webinar. So again, good ways to integrate, this always does this, sorry, augmented reality and digital into your piece. The other is interaction. Remember we talked about getting people to interact with a piece? This was a case study from a customer where they sent out 3 pieces to a similar demographic. One was a map. The other one was a punch out piece, which basically allowed people to kind of build like a paper doll. And the third was an interactive wheel that they would spin. And you could see the response rates speak for themselves. This was a cool example of interacting, even though he's not with us anymore and never will be. There's a Gronk magazine. That's an Nantucket magazine. They got rid of a lot of those magazines. That was a good one for them. You can imagine why. I'll show it to you again. You're welcome. The other one is giveaways. So how do you utilize giveaways? This was a promotion that we did where we just gave people a free gift for attending a webinar, like I did today. You're all here. Look at the conversion rate using email, a combination of email, direct mail, and a giveaway. Yeah, it costs some money, but look at what you're paying these days for lead acquisition on Google or something like that. And again, integrating these channels, right? Email only, kind of crappy. Add direct mail, add the both together, much, much better. Lastly, we're going to talk about human to human concepts. So here's some of the things of the reality that we're dealing with now. We went to a webinar and they talked about B2B, B2C, and H to H, human to human. And we want to encourage people to do these human to human campaigns. Screen time is up significantly. Everybody is becoming a student. This is actually a calendar of a person that I had a webinar with last week, and he put up his calendar to try to schedule some time with me. I asked him if I could screenshot it. Most of those are educational opportunities. So people are just trying to book their schedule with becoming a student. The Gen Z and Millennials have more downtime than ever. I know I have them. You guys that have them, you know, they're no longer, going to school all day, and then they have to go to work, and then they have sports, and then they have homework, and then they have some other social thing that they're doing. They have a more captive audience. I have a daughter who's a senior, as I said. The stuff that was coming from the colleges and universities that was piling up on my counter, she's actually reading them now, because guess what? They have the downtime. You have to provide positive and factual content. We all know that right now. People just need a hug. So again, I put this in honor of my senior. What somebody in the community decided to do these signs. I'm sure they're all over your town as well for the kids that are kind of not getting their graduation. And to that extent, Emmanuel College has done some really cool stuff around that lack of commencement. So this was an article, I think it was shared in the Herald. So the woman there is Joanne Moffat. She was president of the class of 1970 who also did not have a graduation because of Vietnam War protests. And they wrote a letter to the graduating class at Emmanuel for 2020 to talk about their lives after not having a real graduation commencement ceremony. It's been great. The other thing Emmanuel has done, which I think is a great idea, is they're pairing their college seniors that aren't having the graduation with the senior class of their incoming freshmen who are going through the same thing to create that bond. So again, the hug, people need a hug. Positive and factual content, I'm promoting Emmanuel a lot now, but I just love their stuff. So this was a really cool article that this gentleman wrote at the very beginning of this around the toilet paper and the third person effect. It's really phenomenal. They look at stats where, like with snowstorms and things like that, and they ask people a couple questions. One they ask is, how impacted are you by the media? And like 89% answer, not very impacted. And they said, how impacted do you think other people are by the media? And like 96% say, oh, other people are very impacted. And then they went back and they asked him, why did you go out and buy the water, toilet paper, whatever? And most people responded, they did it because they wanted to get it before the hoarders got it. Think about that. None of them are hoarders. They all went out to get it before the hoarders got it. That's what caused it. Other ideas. This was a customer of ours, does a lot with law enforcement. So you can see right here, thank you for all you do. They did a little direct mail piece. They gave out Grubhub gift codes. We used a personalized URL so they didn't have to touch or hand out anything. They went to the URL, they got their codes, they could email them to officers in the field. There's no direct response message here. It's all about just reaching out to people. This is a campaign, the work from home campaign that we're doing. If you want to get signed up for it, reach out to your account executive. First one we did, I remembered that we had all these bags in inventory for customer visits. And in that bag, there's notebooks and pens and stuff like that. There was this little travel kit of stain remover, insect repellent, sunscreen, and hand sanitizer. And it was like, holy crap, nobody's coming to visit us. Let's pull those little kits out. Let's see if any of our customers will give us their home addresses, and let's just send it to them because this hand sanitizer and everybody needs it. We then came up with, we do a webinar on using Business Reply. And one of the cool things that Business Reply has now is called Share Mail, which basically allows you to pre-postage pay on postcards and things like that. But like a BRE, you don't actually pay unless somebody mails it. So we sent out packages of 10 postcards to these customers and said, hey, write a note to somebody you love, let them know you're thinking about them. They're not getting any direct mail, they'll love it, handwritten, and it's all postage paid. And the good thing for us, thinking about this from a business standpoint, it's not like we have to put stamps on all these and buy the stamps. We only get charged the postage when somebody actually mails them. It's called Share Mail. It's a pretty cool program. And then last week was Earth Day, the 50th anniversary. We found this really cool seed paper. So you plant the paper with the image of the earth and a shape of a heart on it, and just sent that out. We've got more planned. So depending on how long this thing goes, we are ready to, if you want to be part of that, just let us know and we can do it. So I'm going to go to the Q&A now. This is our contact information and our webinars. All that's in your handout. Again, expand your orange control panel. The handout is a PDF in there that you can download. I'm going to jump into the questions here and see what people have had. Okay, Jackie, good question. Are the response rates B2C or B2B? Majority of the response rates I'm referencing in here are coming from the DMA statistical fact book and are for B2B communications. So B2C is a little bit different, particularly with emails and things like that, but these are all B2B statistics. I'm trying to think if I have anything in there that's B2C. The interactive mailer where I had the Gronk picture, that's B2C. That was for a university. So they're mailing to parents and students. So I guess that you consider that B2C. Excellent, excellent question. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive, and we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.